Alright, today I'll be taking you through something that I've been looking forward to since I started playing poker. I made my debut on a featured table at the Jackstar Super High Roller tournament. So I've been working my way up to this for a long time, and it's led me here. Welcome to my journey at the Tasmanian Jackstar Super High Roller. This was, and still is to this day, the highest buy-in tournament that I've played so far. I did manage to satellite into this tournament for $100 to win my $1,500 ticket, so I didn't have to fork out the full $1,500. The structure of this tournament is fantastic. Blind levels are nice and long, 40 minutes, and the starting stack is pretty deep, 80,000 chips. We jump in at the start of day 2 because we had a pretty uneventful day 1, which is great because we get to be on the feature table and properly analyse and scrutinise my game. It also means I have less time needing to worry about the graphics. But without further ado, here we go.
So the first hand we actually look at on the stream is the first hand of day 2. So we have blinds recommencing at 2K, 4K with the 4K big blind ante. And the first hand that we look down at, we find ourselves under the gun +2 with pocket 7s. Under the gun, Keith here has min raised to 8K. As you can see, he's got a pretty average pair and we have him absolutely dominated currently. Like I said, it being first hand on stream, I decided to play this quite cautiously and just call. At least they'll have position. Play this cautiously because I'm a little bit nervous. Don't want to do anything wrong on stream. Come across like an absolute idiot, but it's been done before. The action then folds around and we're heads up to the flop, which is the King of Diamonds, 6 clubs, 5 of spades. Keith c-bets here for 10K, which I'd assume he'd be doing with a majority of his holdings. There are a few kings in his range, but there are a lot more ace highs and other hands they may want to realise some of his equity later streets. My hand is way too strong to be folding to 1 bet just now. So we see the turn, which brings in a repeat king of hearts. Now I'm feeling a lot more confident with my pair, not expecting him to be sitting there with any king combo. And with him betting 15K on this turn, I'm much happier and quicker to call. On the river, we see another repeat card, the 5 of diamonds. Now Keith checks here, which I find a bit interesting. I check back just in case there was a cheeky king or an even cheekier 5. In game, one of the hands I put him on was ace-5 suited, with only 2 suited combos of that seemed that likely, and I should probably not have been so worried about exactly what beats me and maybe gone for a little bit of value on the river. My first hand on the stream, slightly daunting environment. Didn't want to get myself check raised on the river in my first hand and put myself in a tough spot. Now the next hand, we get to have a look at good old David Bowen, a character who is going to feature prominently in this video as well as many more in the future, I'm sure. So Bowen min raises under the gun +2. I wake up on the button with King Jack suited and I 3-bet here to 20K to try to thin the field but not allowing the blinds to come for cheap. This is also to kind of test how strong Bowen's min raise is, and given that my image so far has been fairly tight and cautious at the table, I think we can get a little bit of respect here. It does fault Bowen, who doesn't give me that respect and calls. So we go heads up and see a flop of queen spades, jack of clubs, 9 of spades. Not terrible for us, as we do flop middle pair and a gut shot straight draw. Bowen checks to me as the aggressor and I c-bet for 16K, given that this board does hit my range and my hand quite well. Bowen, who has also flopped quite well with the open ender and an overcard, calls. Turn is the 6 of clubs. Doesn't really change anything. The board's the same as it was on the flop. So when Bowen checks again, I keep the pressure on, betting 13.5K. As said, this card didn't really affect anything. So if Bowen had a piece on the flop, he's got the same piece and it hasn't changed on the turn. I think my bet size on this street was a bit small. I probably could have gone for a bit more, possibly to get him to fold his kind of hand exactly. Now the river card is slightly disgusting as it's the ace of spades. The front door flush gets there and the straight completes and another overcard on the board. When Bowen checks for a 3rd time, I'm happy to take my middle pair to showdown, and it turns out I saved myself money on the river, as Bowen does have the ace and hit on the river. Quite happy with how I played that, given the run out exactly. I lost the minimum on the turn. I'm not sure if I can get him to fold the turn, regardless of how big I go. Only possibly a jam, but I wouldn't be super confident and comfortable doing that, especially at this stage. Quite happy with how I played that. Used position to my advantage, put money in the pot when I was ahead, and stopped when I was behind. Seeing as King Jack suited didn't do me any good, let's try the double suited variety. So it folds to me, I'm in the hijack and I'm in raise. Seeing that the big blind isn't at the table yet, hoping to get a little bit of free money, it folds to the small blind, who calls. We're heads up to the flop, which is 4 of diamonds, 9 of diamonds, 6 of hearts. The small blind checks, and it's not a fantastic flop for me, but we do have 2 overs and the backdoor flush draw. But I feel this flop is more in the small blind's calling range, and so I decided to check back. Probably a mistake. I should be c-betting pretty much everything, especially small blind call, but the dynamics of the big blind not being in the table does change things a little bit, I think. The turn brings in the jack of clubs. The small blind, who has turned the gut shot, leads for 6k. But as I've picked up a pair, I quickly call. The river is a repeat 9. Small blind slows down and checks. Slightly concerned of a 9 trying to get me to blow the pot. I check back with decent showdowns and we scoop another small pot. Likelihood wasn't going to get called anyway on the river, so happy to take the value as it was. This hand, blinds are up. They've increased to 2.5k, 5k, 5k big blind ante. Plus one player has finally made his entrance to the table and raises to 10k. I'm on the button with Jack 9 suited, and after seeing this player getting out of line on day 1, I decide to defend. Blinds fold and we see a flop. This flop is 8 or ace, all spades. Todd, the +1, gives up the betting lead, and seeing how aggressive he was on flops in the previous day, take this opportunity to get him to get off a hand that he's clearly not that comfortable with. So I put a small bet out, trying to rep the ace that I would have called from the button, with which he believes and folds. Love not having to go to showdown and just take this one here. So the next hand we have here is an undergun shove for 15 big blinds whilst I'm in the big blind. Duncan here has 6s. I find myself with Queen Jack off. Not terrible holding in the big blind, but facing an all-in that's effectively 3/5 of my stack. It's not quite as strong as I would like it to be, or my stack would need to be a little bit larger. Also, Duncan here hasn't played many hands, folded a lot, and seeing what he's folded on stream after the fact, I'm just happy to let this go and find better spots. We move on. Again with the King Jack. This time we're in the cutoff, and after it folds to me, I raise to 11k. Matt Gin in the big blind calls. And with an ace high flop this time, ace of hearts, 5 of spades, 6 of spades, we completely whiff. Matty checks, and similar to the previous King Jack hand that we went through, I check back as I don't have many backdoors. Turn brings in the 9, which gives Matt a pair, and he checks again. Expecting him not to have an ace and thinking that King High is most likely the best hand, I put in a delayed c-bet for 7.5k, which Matt quickly calls. The river brings in the 8 of clubs, which does complete a straight draw. Matt checks again. I check back, thinking that maybe King High has a little bit of showdown value, but most likely way behind at this stage. There is potential that I could have gotten away with a river bet, but given that he turned second pair, I think I'd have to go pretty large to get him off this hand. The blinds are up again, and we've lost a few more players, and now we find ourselves in the cutoff with kings. So we min raise, as we should, hoping to get a few callers, 1 or 2, and get a bit of a chip up. But no one has much of anything, and we just pick up the blinds. And only a couple of hands later, we find ourselves with queens, this time in +1. Again, we go for the min raise, fairly standard. But this time we do get a caller, which is fantastic. We get Keith in the big blind to come along. We go to a flop, which is, of course, King High. I'm not going to let that worry me too much. No. Especially when Keith checks. Don't expect him to have a king. Sit down, Bowen. I c-bet for 12k, which gets Keith to fold quickly. Next time we look at, we're on the button. And seeing as we're starting to have an ever dwindling stack, we want to start picking up the blinds and building our stack up as much as possible. And using our roomage as being fairly tight and cautious, we shove with Jack 10 off, hoping that we can just take this down pre. Fortunately, neither of the blinds wake up with anything of interest, and we get this through. Not like Jack 10 is that bad to get it in with anyway. Now, here we find ourselves in quite an interesting spot, as Tom here in the hijack raises larger than what is standard for the table to 18k. Now, this is only 3x, but it is noticeable. And we find ourselves with Queen Jack suited right behind him. And there's a few players left to act behind us. We're most likely dominated in this spot, even though, as we can see, we have effectively the same hand. And you can clearly see that I'm thinking hard about this one. But I do end up folding. Tom says that this was a misclick and was more than he wanted to raise. It was meant to just be a min raise.
Yeah, no, that was a misclick. It was only meant to be 12.
I'm not sure if the normal 2x sizing I would have gone with a 3-bet shove, but we'll never know. So here we have the last hand we have before we go to break, which also means we have to swap out the feature table. Sad times. So hoping to build our stack before we get to go on a breather, I raise pocket 4s from the hijack to 15k, which is probably unnecessarily oversized. I can probably just get away with a 2x raise, especially with what comes next. Bowen wakes up with ace king off in the small blind and elects to 3-bet me to 40k. Slightly too big for me to be calling, and hope that I see a decent flop. So maybe a min raise would have gotten a smaller 3-bet, which I may be able to call and set mine. So in this instance, given the size and my stack size, I just let this one go. So after this hand, we go to a non-featured table.
As we move to the outer tables, now would be a great time, if you're enjoying this content so far, drop it a like. Lets me know to keep making content like this. And if you're new here, subscribing wouldn't go amiss. Means you're not going to miss out on any future series that I'll play. Enough of that, back to the game.
So we're back to me having to do the graphics. Oh well, good practice I guess. The first big hand we come across, we have kings in the cutoff. Folds around to me, and for 73k in my stack, I think we're best just to run it here rather than get tricky and get myself in unnecessary trouble. We get through the button, but Todd in the small blind contemplates it and decides he doesn't need these chips just yet. This folds to Bowen in the big blind. He squeezes one card and gives it the old, I think it's safe. I'm happy to get this through. Here I find myself in the small blind with ace-jack off. Todd, under the gun, raises 2.5x to 20k, and it folds to me. I'm hoping he still doesn't want to get these chips, so I jam for 113k, wanting to pick up the dead money and build our stack. And we're not in terrible shape, if we're called. It folds back to Todd, who gets a count of the stack, and decides he does want them now, and calls. And we're up against tens, only just slightly in front of us pre-flop, with just under 60% for him to win. But we just need to hit an ace or a jack, and we're golden. Flop's no help, however, with 8 of diamonds, 4 clubs, 3 hearts. For the turn, being the 5 of spades, we can now add 4 deuces to our outs. And would you believe it? It's the deuce of clubs on the river, giving us the straight. Stack is up to 240k now, much better than just the dead money. Now with a healthy stack, I'm in middle position with Jack 9 suited, so I min click to 16k. There's one fold, and then a tank shove from the hijack, 54k total. This folds all the way back around to me, and I'm unsure if I can call here in this spot, but it's 38k for a total pot size of 128, with pot odds just under 30%. And I run the numbers against the perceived range against my Jack 9 suited, and it's closer to 40% equity, so maybe I should have been calling with this. And even if we're up a super tight range, it's about break even on the call, and I still have 150k behind after the call, so maybe it was worth the punt. But we fold, and we move on. This may have been a mistake. The blind's now up, and I'm in the cutoff, and Bowen, under the gun, raises to 20k. I have ace king off, and I want to get back my chips from the hand we had earlier, the last hand we had on feature table. So if just over that 150k, I stick it all in. It gets through the button, and just as quickly through the blinds. It's back to you, Bowen.
So I have to foul then if we can't. We continue coming out and watch me stack, yeah? No foul.
He didn't have quite enough of a hand to call me off. Oh well, I'll take the blinds, plus the 15k, and a bit of interest. And we're back on the feature table. They just couldn't get enough of this lovely face. As you can see, blinds are up. We're 6k, 12k with a 12k big blind ante. You can also see they were down to 16 runners, which from the 38 that we started day 2 with and 84 overall, we've made a fairly good effort here. Mark, who we've seen before on the channel, we'll link to that here. Mark is +1 and has ace queen suited, which he min clicks to 24,000. Me, in +2, look down at ace king off. I take stock of Mark's stack, my position, relative to players behind, to try and determine if there is a non-all-in 3-bet size. But with so many still to act behind, I decide to just get it in now and get to see all 5 cards in the run out. This quickly gets rid of Matt and Tom in the hijack and cut off. It halts at the other Tom, who also has ace king, but of the suited variety. Don't think I'm getting this through here. So when he shoves over the top, my heart sinks. Feeling that I've got to be behind, he's at least got a pair, and we're flipping at best. This folds back to Mark, who says it's pretty rough and that he was calling my all-in. He eventually folds with table of cards, and I'm quite relieved to be up against the same hand, even though Tom does have the flush draw. The flop is 2 hearts, 3 diamonds, jack of clubs, and the repeat jack on the turn kills that flush free roll, means we'll chop Mark's money, and we're still fighting. So this is the last hand before we go on break. And Tom too has done what he's done a few times before and left the table on his big blind before the break was called. So this sets up the table talking about stealing his big blind. So when it folds to me in the cutoff, but effectively the button, given that Tom's not there, and I wake up with a fairly good hand, ace 10 off. I can steal Tom's big blind and ante and try and chip up before we're on break. I do jam my just over 10 big blind stack, and this gets through Maddie's ace 6 off, but Tom 1 goes and wakes up with ace jack. And when I see the bad news, I realise I'm in big trouble and not very happy. Flop is 6 of diamonds, king of spades. We do have chop outs, but there's also the flush draw we got to worry about. And would you believe, jack of clubs on the turn, pretty much dead. Although, not quite. We've got 3 queens, but the 3 of spades on the river ain't a queen. I'm disgusted, as you can tell. So we're out in 16th place in our first Jackstar Super High Roller.
And that's a wrap for my Jackstar Super High Roller debut. Obviously, I'm gutted to be out, but I'm mostly happy with how I played. Especially since this wasn't just the highest buy-in that I've ever played, but I was up against some of the best players I've ever played against. Running this deep against such a tough field I'll definitely chalk this up as an achievement. Well done, you wasted a $1,500 ticket with nothing to show for it. But hey, that's all part of the grind, eh? The major highlight, as I mentioned, was definitely being on feature table, being able to scrutinise and analyse my game in a more comprehensive manner and see how I was playing up against other players. As I said at the start, it was a little bit intimidating to begin with, but I found my footing and it became a lot more comfortable towards the end. Anyway, it was a great experience all up, and I'm already looking forward to the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a subscribe, and if there's any way that you can see that I can improve my game, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you at the next one. In the meantime, why not watch one of my previous videos here?